I never planned to remember the first time I saw her face. But the moment still plays in my head like a photograph I can't put away. It was late afternoon on campus, the kind of hour where shadows stretch long across the stone paths and students hurry past each other without looking. I'd been told to meet the college counselor assigned to my program. I wasn't expecting much, just paperwork, schedules, the usual small talk. When I walked into her office, she looked up from a stack of papers. And in that instant, the air changed. She was older than I expected, mid-40s maybe. Sharp features softened by tired eyes, the kind that had seen too much but still carried warmth. Her hair was pinned up, but a few loose strands framed her face. Professional, yes. But there was something in the way her eyes lingered a second too long on mine, like she recognized something she shouldn't have. "Sit," she said, motioning to the chair across from her desk. Her tone was calm, steady. But her hand trembled slightly when she pushed a pen aside. I noticed. I wasn't supposed to. We went through the motions. Class requirements, credit transfers, internship opportunities. Her voice was measured, precise. But I couldn't focus. My attention kept drifting, the curve of her wrist as she adjusted her glasses, the faint trace of perfume that didn't belong in a college office, the way she kept her posture too rigid, like she was guarding something. I answered questions, but half my words were filler. She must have noticed. "You're not listening," she said finally, almost smiling, though her eyes didn't quite follow. "I'm trying," I admitted, scratching the back of my neck. "You just talk fast." It was a lie. She didn't talk fast. I just didn't want her to know I was distracted by her. She leaned back in her chair then, studying me. Not the way a counselor studies a student, more like a woman trying to decide if she should let down a wall. "You're different," she said quietly, almost to herself. My chest tightened at that. Different. I wanted to ask what she meant, but she cleared her throat quickly and returned to her notes, as if pulling a curtain shut. The session ended with a list of tasks for me to complete. I gathered my papers, thanked her, and stood. But something inside me resisted leaving. I lingered by the door, hand on the knob. "You've done this job for a while, haven't you?" I asked, my voice lower than I intended. She looked up, surprised by the question. "Long enough," she said. And for a moment, her expression softened, less counselor, more woman. That was when the silence between us shifted. No papers, no schedules. Just her eyes holding mine, a beat too long. I should have left then. But I didn't. Instead, I let my hand slip against the edge of her desk as I passed. Just a brush, skin on wood, but close enough that my fingers almost touched hers. Close enough to feel the pull of something neither of us could name. Her hand froze. She didn't move it away. She didn't move at all. And then, in a voice barely louder than the ticking clock on her wall, she said, "You shouldn't." But she didn't finish the sentence. That was the moment everything changed. I told myself I'd leave it at that. One strange spark in a quiet office, nothing more. But I couldn't stop replaying the way her hand froze under mine, how her words hung unfinished in the air. The next week, I had another appointment. I told myself it was routine, just part of college. Still, I arrived 10 minutes early, heart pounding like I'd been running. Her office door was half closed, and I could hear her pacing inside, muttering to herself. When I knocked softly, she startled, then opened the door. She looked different, not polished this time. Hair loosely tied, faint circles under her eyes. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Long day?" I asked, stepping inside. She hesitated, then sighed. "You could say that." The room felt smaller than before. Papers scattered across the desk, half-empty coffee cup cold on the windowsill. She waved at the chair, but I didn't sit right away. I was too busy noticing the details she probably didn't want me to see, the way her blouse was wrinkled, the faint line of stress etched into her forehead. "Sorry," she murmured, catching me staring. "I'm not usually like this." I wanted to say something light, something to make it easy. But instead, what came out was, You don't have to apologize. Her eyes flickered toward mine, quick and searching, like she wasn't sure if I meant it the way it sounded. We went through the session half-heartedly, her words wandering, my notes mostly blank. The truth was, I couldn't focus on classes or schedules anymore. All I could think about was how close we were sitting, how the air carried that faint trace of her perfume, how her hands fidgeted with the same pen over and over. Halfway through, she leaned back and let out a quiet laugh. It was fragile, almost bitter. Do you know how strange this feels? She asked. I swallowed. Strange how? She looked down at her hands. You're my student. I'm supposed to help you. And yet, she cut herself off, shaking her head. I should have let it drop. Instead, I leaned forward. And yet? Her lips parted, but no words came. The silence stretched, heavy and charged. I felt every second of it in my chest. Inside, I was at war with myself. I knew why this was wrong, why I shouldn't notice the way her voice softened when she let her guard down, or how her eyes stayed on me a fraction longer than necessary. She was older, my counselor, someone with a whole life I didn't belong in. But I couldn't unsee her. I couldn't unknow the way being near her made everything else fade. Finally, she exhaled, a sound caught between a sigh and a surrender. You're not making this easy, she whispered. I froze. What do you mean? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached across the desk, her fingers brushing against my arm, light, tentative, like testing fire. Stay a little longer, she said, so quietly I almost thought I imagined it. And just like that, every reason to walk away slipped further out of reach. I should have walked out the second she said those words. Stay a little longer. But I didn't. I sat there, every nerve alive, pretending to study the notes scattered across her desk when in truth, I was only watching her. She leaned back in her chair, eyes closed for a moment, as though she just revealed too much and needed to retreat. Then her phone buzzed. The sharp sound cut through the room. She flinched before grabbing it, silencing the screen without answering. But not before I caught a glimpse, a man's name. She turned the phone face down. You're busy, I said quickly, standing to leave. My voice didn't sound like mine, too tight, too defensive. No. She reached out, fingers grazing my sleeve before she seemed to realize what she was doing. She pulled back, tucking her hand into her lap. No, please stay. I froze. The word please carried a weight I wasn't ready for. I sat again, awkwardly, trying to steady myself. Is that your husband? I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes narrowed, but not with anger. More like surprise. She said after a long pause. It ended a while ago. Something in me loosened at that, though I tried not to show it. I didn't mean to pry, I muttered. You're honest, she said, almost smiling. Too honest sometimes. We both laughed quietly, but the sound was uneasy, charged. I could feel the distance between us shrinking, even as I told myself it was all in my head. Then it happened, one of those moments you can't prepare for. I reached across to slide a paper closer, and she reached at the same time. Our hands collided. Not a brush, not accidental, full contact. Her skin warm, mine clumsy and lingering. I should have pulled away instantly. I didn't. Neither did she. Her eyes locked on mine, and for a second the world outside the office vanished. Just silence, the faint ticking clock, her breathing quickening almost in rhythm with mine. Then knock. The door rattled lightly, a voice muffled from the hall. Counselor? You in there? We jolted apart, both yanking our hands back like we'd been burned. Her eyes went wide, her lips parting in panic. She cleared her throat, called out. Busy, come back later! Her voice too sharp, too urgent. Footsteps retreated. The hallway quiet again. I could feel my pulse in my neck, in my wrists, everywhere. That was... I started, but the words died. She stood suddenly, pacing to the window. This is dangerous, she whispered, more to herself than to me. I wanted to agree. I wanted to be the rational one. But all I could say was, "Then why can't I stop thinking about it?" She turned then, slowly, her face unreadable. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat of her presence. Her hand lifted as though she might touch my face, then hovered, trembling, inches away. And that was where she left me, caught in the space between her hesitation and my need, wondering if we were seconds away from crossing the line neither of us could uncross. I told myself I wouldn't go back. After the knock on her door, after the way we ripped our hands apart like we'd been caught doing something shameful, I swore I'd keep my distance. But a week later, I found myself standing outside her office again, palms sweating, heart thudding like I'd been running. I told myself I just needed to ask about my schedule, that it was practical, harmless. But the truth was simpler. I wanted to see her. When she finally looked up and saw me, her eyes widened just slightly before she masked it with her professional calm. "You again," she said softly. "Me again," I echoed, stepping inside and closing the door behind me. For a long moment neither of us spoke. She tapped a pen against her desk, a rhythm too quick, too nervous. I shifted in my chair, pretending not to notice. But I noticed everything. The faint blush creeping up her neck. The way she avoided looking at me directly. The small tremor in her fingers. "You shouldn't be here," she finally whispered. "Then tell me to leave," I said. My voice cracked, betraying me. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling like she needed strength from somewhere else. "You're young," she murmured. "Too young. You don't understand the weight of this." "I understand enough," I said quickly, leaning forward, my voice low, urgent. "I know what I feel when I'm around you. I know I can't stop thinking about you. And I know you feel it too." Her eyes snapped to mine, sharp, almost angry, but not denial. It was something else. Something raw. "You have no idea how dangerous this is," she said, her voice trembling now. "My job, my reputation, your future, everything could be ruined." I swallowed hard. "Then why didn't you pull your hand away?" The silence that followed was heavy, almost unbearable. Her lips parted, her chest rising and falling like she was fighting for breath. "Because I didn't want to," she whispered. The words hit me like a blow. I felt heat surge through me, my pulse hammering. I wanted to close the distance, to erase the space between us. But I forced myself to stay in the chair, gripping the armrests like a lifeline. She stood suddenly, moving to the window again. Her back to me, shoulders tense, she spoke so quietly I almost didn't hear. "I thought I was past this. Past, wanting something I shouldn't." I rose too, unable to sit still anymore. "You don't have to hide it," I said, my voice rough. She turned then, slowly. Our eyes locked across the small room, and for the first time, either of us looked away. The air between us was thick, charged, dangerous. Every instinct screamed that this was the moment, the one where a line would be crossed forever. And then she asked, barely above a whisper, "Tell me, if I let you, would you really stay?" The question hung there, heavy as thunder, and the silence after it felt like the edge of a cliff. Her question still echoed in my head, "If I let you, would you really stay?" I thought I'd answer without hesitation. But before the words could leave my lips, she looked away, her face suddenly pale, like she regretted even asking. Then she reached for a folder on her desk, flipping it open with hands that shook more than before. "I need to show you something," she said. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the strain. She slid the folder across to me. I glanced down, expecting more class schedules or internship lists. Instead, I froze. It was my file. Not the ordinary kind. This one held notes, personal ones, written in her hand. Things I didn't even know she'd noticed. Tends to isolate himself. Hesitates to ask for help. Overcompensates with humor. Seems restless, searching. My throat tightened. You wrote all this?" Her eyes flicked up to mine, guilty, unguarded. "It's part of my job," I'm supposed to track these things. But I heard the tremor in her voice. This wasn't just professional. This was her seeing me, really seeing me, in ways no one else had. That's not just notes, I said softly, my pulse pounding. That's me. All of me. For the first time, she didn't deny it. Her lips parted, but instead of words, what came was silence, silence so loaded it felt like confession. Before I could speak again, her phone buzzed on the desk. She flinched, snatched it up, and this time she answered. Hello? She said quickly. A pause, then a low, strained. Yes. No, I can't, not now. Her voice cracked at the last word. She hung up and set the phone down with a sharp clatter. I stared. Who was that? Her jaw tightened. My ex. He still thinks he has the right to check in. She shook her head, bitter. He knows how to make me feel cornered. Like I'll always owe him something. I felt heat rise in my chest, protective, reckless. You don't owe him anything. She gave a humorless laugh. You say that like it's simple. I leaned closer, my voice firm. It is simple. He doesn't see you. Not the way I do. Her breath caught, her eyes snapping to mine. For a moment, everything else disappeared. And then, another knock. Louder this time. Counselor? Are you in there? A male voice, older, authoritative. Her eyes widened in panic. She pressed a finger to her lips, urging me silent. My heart thundered as I froze in place. The knock came again. We need to talk. It's important. She whispered, barely audible. That's him. I felt the ground shift beneath me. The secret glances, the trembling hands, the unfinished sentences, all of it suddenly heavier. This wasn't just about me and her anymore. Someone else was at the door, someone who could shatter everything. And all I could think was, do I stay hidden, or do I stand up and face him? The choice pressed down like a storm, and in her wide, terrified eyes I saw that whatever happened next would change us forever. The knock at the door lingered in the air like a warning. Her eyes stayed fixed on me, wide and unsteady, until the footsteps finally faded down the hall. Only then did she exhale, sinking back into her chair as though her body couldn't hold itself up any longer. I stood frozen, my hands clenched into fists. You can't keep doing this, I said, more sharply than I intended. She flinched. Doing what? Pretending you don't want this. I shot back, my voice rough, breaking. Pretending I'm just another student. Pretending that what's happening between us isn't real. Her lips parted, but nothing came. I could see her chest rising and falling, the weight of her silence crushing the space between us. Finally, she whispered, Do you have any idea what you're asking of me? Yes, I said, stepping closer. My throat was tight, but I pushed the words out anyway. I'm asking you not to hide anymore. Not from me. Not from yourself. She shook her head, tears threatening but not falling. You're young. You don't understand what it means to gamble everything, then teach me. I interrupted, softer now. Show me. Because all I know is that when I walk out that door, every part of me wants to come back. And I can't keep pretending that's just paperwork or chance. For a long, aching moment, she just stared at me. Then, slowly, she rose from her chair. Her steps toward me were hesitant, like each one was a decision she could still turn back from. When she stopped just inches away, her hand lifted, shaking, fragile, and rested against my chest. You make me feel alive in a way I thought I'd buried, she admitted, her voice breaking. And that terrifies me. I covered her hand with mine, holding it there, over the pounding rhythm she'd stirred inside me. It terrifies me too, I said. But isn't that the point? Her eyes searched mine, desperate, searching for permission to fall. And in that gaze I felt the walls she had spent years building start to crack. I can't promise you forever, she whispered. I'm not asking for forever, I said. I'm asking for now. For honesty. For something real. The silence after that was sharp, loaded. Then she leaned in, resting her forehead against mine. The closeness was unbearable, intoxicating. For a second, either of us breathed. And when she finally kissed me, soft, tentative, like a secret finally spoken aloud, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't polished. It was human, raw, filled with every ounce of fear and longing we had been drowning in. When she pulled back, her voice trembled. "If we do this, there's no going back." I nodded, my chest heaving. "Then let's not go back." The room was quiet, except for the sound of two people finally choosing not to lie to themselves anymore. We didn't leave her office that night as counselor and student. We left as something else, something neither of us had expected, yet both of us had been pulled toward from the very beginning. The days after weren't easy. Every glance in the hallway felt like a risk, every word exchanged in public laced with careful distance. But in the quiet, when doors were closed and the rest of the world had no say, we let ourselves exist honestly. No more unfinished sentences. No more pretending. She told me about the years she'd spent in silence, the marriage that had drained her, the way she'd built walls so high she believed no one would ever climb them again. She admitted she felt shame at first, fear of judgment, fear of losing the role that defined her. I told her about the loneliness I'd carried since arriving at college, how I'd buried myself in work, convinced no one could see through the mask I wore. Until she noticed the things no one else did. Somewhere between the stolen hours and the whispered promises, our fear became something else. It became the thread that tied us together. We weren't perfect. We weren't even certain about the future. But we had chosen each other, in all our flaws, and that choice mattered more than the doubts. One evening, weeks later, we sat in her office again. Same desk, same chairs, but everything felt different. "You know," she said, half smiling as she pushed a folder toward me, "you're technically still my student. I should be giving you advice." I grinned, leaning closer. "Then give me some." Her eyes softened. "Don't run from the things that scare you. Sometimes, that's where the truth is." Her words landed heavier than she probably meant them to. Because that was exactly what she had taught me without realizing it, that the most terrifying things could also be the most real. I reached across the desk, not hesitant this time, and she didn't pull away. Our fingers laced together, simple, steady. In that moment, I realized it wasn't about stolen glances or secret meetings anymore. It was about choosing to be seen fully by someone who could have turned away but didn't. And maybe that's all love really is. Not perfection. Not safety. Just the choice to stay, even when leaving might be easier. That night, as we walked out of her office side by side, the campus lights glowing faintly in the dark, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever the world thought, whatever obstacles lay ahead, she was no longer just my counselor. She was my secret, my risk, my beginning. And this time, I wasn't going to let her slip away. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?